When the train, the Metropolitan branch of the B&O Railroad, came through the county, it changed life in the county forever. It changed the economy, it changed the agriculture, it changed the whole society. So it brought us into the industrial age. Kensington, Garrett Park, railroad suburbs made Gaithersburg and Rockville into cities. And it made Up County, we had milk stops then, all these little milk stops near the farms along the way. Germantown, which was 1 mile to the west of where of the railroad tracks, moved 1 mile to the east to be next to the tracks. The whole business center moved. The Germantown train station is unique because it looks like the original one, but it isn't. It was burned down in 1978 by arsonists, and it was rebuilt by the county with federal transportation funds, using the original architectural designs of Francis Baldwin. Now, it was originally built in 1891. Before that, the train had been running for several years before that. There was just a little frame station here. And the Germantown station is almost identical with the Kensington station and the Dickerson station. Francis Baldwin liked to play around with his designs and make subtle little changes here and there. So you'll find some buildings that look very similar. This year we're celebrating the 150th anniversary of the train. The first train came through on May 25th, 1873. The 150th anniversary of the train is being coordinated by Montgomery Preservation. They are planning an excursion train to run on Memorial Day. The excursion train will have 8 cars on it, so about 600 people can ride the train. And it will start at Silver Spring and go up to Brunswick, Maryland, where it will stop for about 2 hours. It will be just a great way to ride the train and show your kids and your family all about what trains are like today and what they used to be like.
The car that we're standing in is known as an RDC, a rail diesel car. It's self-propelled, which means that the engine is actually built into the car itself. This type of car began service on the Baltimore, Ohio in 1953. Starting between Washington and Baltimore. B&O was satisfied with the performance and they ordered more of them, and by 1957 then all of B&O's commuter service was with these RDC types of cars. In the 1830s, Baltimore, Ohio was building their main line west from Baltimore, and in 1835 they also completed a line from Baltimore to Washington. And that was Washington's first and only railroad service for years, which meant that to get to Washington by railroad from the west, a person had to travel to or nearly to Baltimore at a junction called Relay, and then about 30 miles southwest down to Washington. In 1853, a group started to build a railroad from Georgetown through Montgomery County. But it didn't get very far. And in 1857, they finally had to give up for lack of funding. And soon afterward came the Civil War. But after the Civil War, B&O decided that they needed to build a line west from Washington. And they were able to obtain the charter of that never-built railroad, which was called the Metropolitan Railroad. So that charter and that name became the basis for what B&O called its Metropolitan branch. A little bit more than 42-mile line that ran from downtown Washington to Point of Rocks, where it joined their old main line that went to Baltimore. It was this railroad that is what really started the transformation of Montgomery County to what it is today. with the bringing of business and suburban population growth all over the line. And we still have quite a bit of Metropolitan branch heritage today. And in fact, the towns of Kensington, Garrett Park, and Boyd's and Tacoma Park were created because of the Metropolitan branch. While the railroad was responsible for the formation of several towns along the line, there were a few existing towns, in particular Gaithersburg and Germantown, that changed quite a bit because of the railroad. Their town centers were not located where the railroad came through, but after the railroad came through, they decided that's where the future was. So they moved their businesses, and so where the railroad runs through the center of Gaithersburg now and Germantown, that's where the new town centers came, with business and population growing around those locations. Construction of the Metropolitan branch began in 1866, but due to a number of legal, political, and financial difficulties, it took quite a while to complete the line. So that line was not completed until February 8th of 1873. And it's appropriate that we're here taking a video portion in Gaithersburg, because Gaithersburg is very significant to the Metropolitan branch. It was here on that Saturday in February of 1873 when the line was completed. And they had a special celebration for that event, just as we recently had for the 150th anniversary of the completion of the line and the beginning of service. Although the main track was completed here in February of 1873, service on the line did not begin until May 25th of that year, due to various finishing work that needed to be done, which included putting in passing sidings and getting the track ballast finished and other work like that. After the line was completed, very soon all of the B&O's long-distance passenger trains that went west to and from Baltimore began running through Washington and then on the Metropolitan branch for their trip. But not the long-distance freight trains. Most of them still remained running on the line from Baltimore. When the railroad was completed, initially there was one main track through this area. And then over time, B&O, as the line grew and traffic grew, completed a second main track from Washington. It reached Gaithersburg in 1893, and then ultimately was completed in the rest of the line in 1928. And at that time, then the through freights from Baltimore to the west, many of those started to run on the Metropolitan branch. The B&O Historical Society, the headquarters building, is located in Eldersburg, Maryland. And the society exists to preserve the history of the B&O, to also help people who want to do research on various aspects of B&O. They put out a publication 4 times a year with articles about historical aspects of the railroad. And of course, they're always welcoming new members.
Garrett Park has an interesting history. We really are a train town. Our history really begins with the Metropolitan branch of the B&O Railroad. Investors at that time were really thinking, how do you capitalize on this? And in 1886, a man by the name of Henry Kopp created the Metropolitan Investment and Building Company and got like-minded investors to start buying property. They bought 500 acres of land on both sides of the railroad, which eventually became Garrett Park. We really only developed about 1/3 of that land on this side of the railroad tracks. But the idea was to entice people from Washington, D.C. who wanted to get out of the downtown area, come out to what was considered the highlands of Montgomery County and settle in Garrett Park. So by 1888, people started building homes here. By the early 1890s, we had a number of homes. We had a one-room schoolhouse. By the late 1890s, we had our chapel. But the big thing that then became the history of Garrett Park was in 1897, I believe it was, get my dates right, we had an individual by the name of Grace Spriggs bought a house in town, one of the Victorians, and she wanted to be radical and install an indoor toilet, a water closet, that was connected to an underground privy vault or cesspool. And at the time, typhoid was happening in the area, and so her neighbors were concerned that her underground privy tank would contaminate the water and lead to typhoid. But they really had nothing they could do about it because we weren't an incorporated town. So then the town residents got the idea. They went to the Maryland General Assembly, and in April of 1898, the Maryland General Assembly passed an act to incorporate the town of Garrett Park, giving them full privileges to conduct elections, to write ordinances, and to enforce them. And so on May 4th, we held our first election in Garrett Park. And one of the first things the new town leaders did was to pass a sanitation ordinance and to try to shut down Grace Spriggs' underground privy vault or cesspool. They had 2 years of legal battles, and ultimately the town of Garrett Park won. Interestingly, not because they were right about the risk of contamination, but because the courts upheld that now that they were an incorporated town, they could write their own ordinances and enforce them. So that's our kind of fun, quirky history, and we've been quirky ever since.
Hi, my name is John Seri. I am with Montgomery Preservation, and I am the station manager for the historic Silver Spring, Baltimore, and Ohio Railroad Station. When the railroad came in, it just really started the development of Silver Spring to a much greater degree and many of the outlying communities. The first station here was in 1878. There were a number of tracks here on the side of the building. They used to be called team tracks, and that's because they would bring supplies in for the town or city, and teams of horses with carts would come and unload the boxcars and take the materials to wherever they were going. So that really was a big factor in the coming of the railroad in the economic development of Silver Spring. We have a life-size cardboard cutout here in the station of President Harry Truman. He's kind of the patron saint of our station. And the reason for that is he used to actually come to this station when he was president. Now back in those days, that was before Air Force One, so they had private rail car number one. That's how the president got around. And oftentimes, if he had been out in the Midwest or somewhere and was coming back to Washington, he would have the train with his private car stop here, and he would get off here to avoid the crowds, in Washington, D.C., a Union Station. And then also, sometimes he would motorcade out here with his family, his wife and daughter. If they were going to back to their home in Independence, Missouri, he would come here to see them off. And sometimes he would come back to pick them up when they later arrived. So that was pretty historically significant for our station. As things progressed, the town kept growing and was in need of a better facility. And I think the railroad also wanted to modernize. It was close to DC. They wanted to project an image of a up-and-coming modern railroad. And this station was then built in 1945 to replace the earlier station. When it became apparent that the station was in such a state of disrepair that the railroad was going to demolish it, there were quite a few residents of Silver Spring who hated to see this landmark disappear. And there was kind of a groundswell of opinion that this should be saved. And fortunately, Montgomery Preservation was able to come up to the plate and say, okay, we'll attempt it. And they were able to secure a grant, and through grants and through donations, the project to rehabilitate the building started. The whole process of rehabilitating a station is quite a challenge. In one regard, it's finding artifacts that were there originally that had disappeared over the years. One of the things that was gone was the phone booth behind me here, the original phone booth. Somebody had taken that out. The really nice station agent's clock, that they used as a master clock, was gone. That was later recovered. Some of the artifacts were still here. The station agent's original typewriter is in the ticket booth. The chairs in here, the benches, are original. They had to be cleaned up, a number of them redone, but those were original. And we were able to also save some things, like we have one of the cast iron Silver Spring destination signs that were out on the lampposts. As the trains were arrived, passengers could see those. So we've recovered quite a bit of stuff. When the project to restore the station was first initiated, one of the goals was to eventually get it back into community use. We just didn't want it to be a look-in museum space. We wanted people to actually be able to enjoy that. So that's one of the great things over the 20-plus years that we've been reopened, that people in the local community can rent the building out for functions. We've had many birthday parties, children and adults. We've had book signings, we've had wine tastings, we've had art exhibits, and we've even had several weddings, small weddings here. We certainly encourage people to learn more about preservation in Montgomery County. One of the things you can do is go to the MPI website, montgomerypreservation.org, and learn more about historic preservation. And we invite people to come down and visit us here. We have an open house at the station the first Saturday of every month from 10 to 2. Come on down and get on board.
The story, of course, really starts right here with the railroad. The reason that Washington Grove is here is because the Metropolitan branch decided to run a railroad out to Gaithersburg. And this was the last stop before Gaithersburg. They found this property here. It had a lot of springs. It was high country. It wasn't too low in most of the places. And they said, this is it.
I understand the town of Washington Grove, called a town within a forest, began at the camp meeting on August 13 in 1873, a very rainy week. At that time, people from Washington, D.C. took a train north to Washington Grove, where it was cooler, and they stayed in tents. Later, they built summer cottages, some of which still exist today.
Here we go. We're starting with
Good day.
It's a Good Day.
Yes, it's it's a good day for singing a song, and it's a good day for moving along. Yes, it's a good day. How could anything go wrong? A good day from morning till night. Yes, it's a good day for shining your shoes, and it's a good day for losing the blues. Everything to gain and nothing to lose, 'cause it's a good day from morning till night. I said to the sun, good morning, sun, rise and shine today. You know you've got to get going, and you've got to get to shine, and you know you've got the right of way, 'cause it's a good day for paying your bills, and it's a good day for curing your ills. So take a deep breath, 'cause life is a thrill. A good day from morning till night. Yes, it's a good day from morning till night. Yes, it's a good, good day from morning till night.
Be it proclaimed by the virtue and authority vested in me as the mayor of the town of Kensington, I do hereby deem it an honor and a pleasure to recognize John Morris as the Kensington Train Station Ambassador on the 29th day of May 2023 for his loyal passion greeting marked train riders each and every evening.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this honor. I appreciate it. I enjoy being at the station just about every afternoon and greeting the townspeople. Thanks for coming today, supporting the service. Thank you for everybody that was a part of getting this train ride together. It took a lot of effort, a lot of people. Enjoy the rest of the day. That's the end of my speech. Thank you so much.
We were very happy to have at least 600, if not more folks, stop for a 2-hour layover here. It's really exciting to have that kind of influx into town. And of course, these people are railroad enthusiasts, so they're going to naturally stop at the museum, which we greatly appreciate. Hello, my name is James Castle. I am the president of the Brunswick Heritage Museum here in Brunswick, Maryland. So the Brunswick Heritage Museum started in 1974 to tell the story of Brunswick as a railroad industrial town. One of our key features is a large HO scale model layout on the 3rd floor. And our 2nd floor tells the story of the history of the town. And there is a C&O Canal Visitor Center on our 1st floor. When the railroad line got here, we were primarily a canal village. The railroad's purpose for going by what was called Berlin at the time, that's Brunswick prior to 1890. They were trying to get to Harper's Ferry. That was the biggest city in the area. And then in 1890, the B&O Railroad decided to move its main yard operation here to Brunswick, and a boomtown emerged. And we went from about 200 people to 2,000 people in just a few years. The biggest asset we have on the Metropolitan branch is the Brunswick train station. It's a Francis Baldwin train station, the same architect that designed Point of Rocks and many other stations along the line. And in its present location, it was built in 1891. It was originally built about 5 blocks away and later moved in 1891 to its current location.